What's going on, everybody? It's your dude here, Riz, and we're going to be doing a roleplay review today for a couple of roleplays. First one's going to be Meetings of All Sorts, which is just kind of like a random meetup roleplay, and then we're also going to do Year of the Dragon. And both of these are logs that I should have reviewed a long time ago, but I finally got some free time. Don't have sick child at home with me, and I got some time to actually sit in my recording studio and get the stuff banged out. So without further ado, what's up? How you doing? Let's get right to it. Hi. So like I said, we're going to start with Meeting of All Sorts, and in this log we have Hypo, Yuta, Leaf, and Ariel, and then at the beginning it's Torque and Arcturus, who are Hypo's followers. And the type is a dialogue, and the synopsis is pretty easy. Hypo's discussing canvas matters with Torque and Arcturus, and then he meets up with Ariel, Yuta, and Leaf, and they end up discussing various topics, and then Ariel finds something. Spoiler alert, it's Dragon Ball. And when I originally read this log and I read the started doing the review on it, there wasn't really much to say. There's a couple of things that I wanted to pick out, but the reason that I'm doing this one is because throughout this, I mean, it was just a kind of slice of life, you know, like most of these are just, hey, anybody want to role play? Like, what do we want to do? Well, let's just meet up and talk. Perfectly fine, right? Perfectly cool. Hope everybody had fun doing it. But wasn't anything like, let's shoot a video about it. But then I read through it again and was like, yeah, there actually is. But, you know, Hypo is at the start of this talking with Arcturus and Torque, and really they're kind of giving him the pep talk of like, you are now the leader of Canvas, and this is what you need to do. You need to train your army. You know, this is kind of what sets him off on that path of, I need to go find Ascended. I need to do all these things to amass this power. And yeah, the Canvas story is going on still. I'm curious to see where it goes when it takes off. And like, one of the first things I want to talk about with this is that I know in the last video I said, when I was covering Minas Mordred, is that Hypo needs to be present for this story of Canvas to be believable, for him to be someone that these people are going to follow. He actually needs to be there, which is a really interesting dichotomy, because you have Hypo, the character, who needs to progress his story, but then you have Seru, the writer, who kind of just wants to roleplay with other people. So what does he do? He either pulls everybody into his personal plot and story, and they have to find their way through it, or he puts himself where the other players are in our roleplay setting. And I think the way that he's doing it now, where he's off and doing it, I think that is the better way, right? It may not help his Canvas story, but it does just kind of help him role play with other people. So I wanted to mention that for sure, because I think that, yeah, it kind of puts a lot of us at a crux of like, well, I want my character to have a story and I want it to go this way, but where's the role play happening? So do you put yourself in sort of like a solo hell where you just want to tell your story? You can, but you won't ever really have any fun interactions with other players unless they are forced to be on your same track. And not everybody, especially with a story that's as focused as this one, where there is a clear objective to be done. People aren't really NPCs in other people's stories, but they kind of have to be unless they thrust themselves almost into like main character territory, to be involved in this plot. So I really think that I think that Seru is doing the right thing with Hypo by kind of having him be a proxy leader. And I think really he should just, if it were me, honestly, like if I were a part of Canvas, I would say you should let Arcturus and Torque just run it. Like, I know the title of being the leader of everything seems cool, but de facto, it should just be somebody else. But that's just my opinion. And that's, you know, pretty what they're talking about. They do mention that, you know, Cordio goes off to Hideo. Hydia, sorry, and that, you know, there's plans and pieces of everything coming together for them to gain this power base that they are looking for. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes out. And really, this is just like a hypo solo that everybody kind of jumped on in here towards the end. And so now we get to Ariel, and it took me a couple of reads to understand what Ariel was trying to say, but Ariel goes through a portal right after Yule, and they think that they're back on Nig Yellow because they're in the blizzard forest, and it's like incredibly cold and blinding snow is everywhere. They're like, oh yeah, clearly I'm back on Nig Yellow. God, is it cold? I can't see anything. And they're just like trudging through the snow in what I assume is still like Yuletide clothes, you know? So for those of you U.S. college students, the walk of shame, when you're out partying too late and you have to walk back to your house or to your dorm in the clothes that you partied in the night before, and you're woefully underdressed for the weather. That's kind of what I imagine Ariel was going through. And I thought it was really funny. I thought it was really cute. And along the way, they kind of run into something in the snow that they can't really see. They don't really know what it is. And it ends up being Yuta. And they just kind of meet there in the middle. And while Ariel is walking, she gets hit with something. And, you know, we go through the whole log of her being like, ah, God, what is this? And she's almost like miserable the whole time. Like, Ariel is a character that I'm seeing that just doesn't like snow, doesn't like being out in the freezing cold and in the blizzard of the forest. But, you know, they eventually get to the ship. That's also where they meet Leaf. After Yuta kind of excuses himself. And I don't really have a lot of things for Yuta because Yuta as a character, this is my second or third log that I've read on them, is still in like the gestation phase of like, you know, the Stopes is trying to figure out who this character is and is trying to figure out how to navigate this character and, you know, what kind of things motivate this character, what kind of things does this character say, what's their personality. So Yuta is just kind of there, and kind of in the next log that I'm going to cover too, where they are a part of the story, but they aren't yet adding to it. They aren't really making a big impact, which is going to take time. So don't rush it. Just, you know, feel out the character. I think Yuta kind of getting into a non-life-threatening combat situation would help with that. And I think I would like to see a spar between Ariel and Yuta personally. I just think that'd be good for both characters. But yeah, Yuta makes their exit, and then Leaf joins, and then Leaf joins. And I say it like that because I have not had a chance to say on channel and on page the Leaf that we are seeing. And the other night when I finally awarded Year of the Dragon, Ike comes into Hell's Gates, and without saying anything, with no context or anything, he just ports in and just like Flanderism. I'm like, all right, what? He's just like Flanderism. No context, no nothing, not even a hi, not even a nice to see you, didn't even emote kissing me or anything like that. Just Flanderism. I'm like, okay, I see the word, I see the text, I know what it means. What are you talking about? And for those of you that don't know, let's look this up together. Let's do this together. Flanderism. The term Flanderism was coined by TV tropes in reference to Ned Flanders of The Simpsons, who is a caricature over the show's run from a friendly, good-hearted neighbor into a dogmatic, evangelical Bible thumper. Really, it means when you have a character and they have just some quirk about them, and then that quirk slowly evolves into the character. And that quirk evolving into the character is what Leaf has become. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in Year of the Dragon. But Leaf joins, and he Leaf is so a fish out of water that it's almost impossible not for his personality and his presence to overpower the page. And I don't want to say that that's a bad thing. It's not. Just think of like if you're painting with watercolor, right? You got a little blue up here, you got a little yellow up here. You know, you're making an impressionist painting. It doesn't really have anything that it's supposed to be. It can be interpreted in any way. And then you take not watercolor but black ink and you put black ink on there. It'll add to the picture, but it will definitely be the spot that you were now looking at, and it kind of overshadows the blue, it kind of overshadows the yellow, whatever you were trying to make. Now it is black ink surrounded by other things. And again, I'm not taking a dig at Ike. It's not that I dislike Leaf, but he stands out so well that it's kind of hard for other people to fit in where he is. And it's a weird conundrum because the character is just being himself, but he's like so naive to everything that certain things that would be overlooked that he is picking up on then becomes the focus, right? So I'm going to go back a couple logs to where Genesis and Leaf are talking. Saliath shows up, and Leaf is so strucken by seeing a ship for the first time that kind of becomes a narrative tool. And again, not a bad thing. It just, wherever the conversation was going to go, now that is the focus. But he shows up. He's talking, and Leaf is really just trying to get to know the verse, right? So when I say, and I'm going to say this word, and it's going to sound mean. It's not mean. But he's just ignorant of the ways of the greater verse, and not in a bad thing. I mean, ignorance is something that all of us are born with. There are things in my life right now that I'm ignorant to. It doesn't mean that I'm dumb or anything. I just don't know. Like, if you were to talk about advanced physics to me, I'd be ignorant on the subject, so I should not speak on it. And Leaf is trying to become more worldly and be more learned. So him meeting Ariel is like a big deal to him, right? And he's mispronouncing words, and it kind of makes confusion. So he is very much a fun addition to almost every roleplay that he's in. And it could take something as simple as just meeting up on a ship and then turn it into something that's golden, right? Like he's mispronouncing Hydia, and he, then Hypo then picks up and he's like, oh, that's how you pronounce that. I've been calling it wrong this entire time. And then he goes on like Kiyoshin, Kayoshan, Kai-U-Shen. So he's like, making these jokes of something so simple, like Kaioshin. Like, everybody knows what these are. And finally, after all this talking, after all this time, Hypo's like, Ariel, we're on Earth. So this whole dialogue that they're having on the ship, where they're talking about, like the waste of Nick Yellow and, how things were on Yule, and like they're just having all these talks. Ariel in her mind thinks that she's still on Nick Yellow, and then Hypo's like, no, we're on Earth. And then she's like, no, we're on a ship. And that was something I was like, God, this is great. This is gold. And again, I'm gonna have to give credit to Leaf to this, where he just kind of came in, changed the dynamic of the role play, and everybody's just a little bit more relaxed. Everybody's a little bit more like kind of, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, this he's just like the leaves that you would have in a pipe that would relax you after a long day. That's the best way to describe Leaf. And then they fly off to Mikono City. I think it was Mikono City. It's been a minute since I've read through the log proper, but that's pretty much it. Yeah, they Pepper City. Sorry, they go to Pepper City. It's just a hey, we're gonna meet up. We're gonna talk about some things. But what was what was also cool was that they revealed later that the thing that smacked Ariel on the head while they were walking through the blizzard was their Dragon Ball. So congratulations to Ariel, you now possess a Dragon Ball. Your life is in grave and mortal danger for anybody who wants to collect them all. And the last thing that I do want to say about this log, while I did like it, again, it was just a meetup. It was just a random night of whatever day. I think it was like December 28th that people wanted to meet up and just role play. It was a read, right? It wasn't anything spectacular. Nothing of major note happened. There wasn't anything bad in any of the writing. I have no tips for anybody. I have nothing bad to say about the log. It just was a read. But the tips that I like, again, Ariel getting hit on the head by something, it being later revealed that it was her Dragon Ball. I love that. I thought that was really cute. Leaf's introduction kind of breaking up not so much the tension, but just being a dynamic shift in the conversation. I did appreciate that. And then for Hypo, there was one thing that Hypo said at the beginning when he was talking to Arcturus and Torque that for me personally has been the most interesting Hypo story that he has ever said. And basically, I don't know exactly where it is, but Hypo was telling Arcturus and Torque that he was just we'll just say like a youngling that was found out in the wastes of Nighello, and that he almost was alluding that he was put there on purpose. And that to me struck me as very interesting. And when I say it's the most interesting thing about this character is because, one, it's a mystery, and two, it kind of explains why he was out there. Because throughout our history, we've never really explored the wilds of Nighello. We've always kind of made it seem like they were uninhabitable, that if you went out there and you weren't some sort of alien or android, you wouldn't survive out there. The planet has very little atmosphere, so it's like, when you start to kind of think of the science, it's like nothing can grow out there, it's all ice. If anything does survive out there, it has to survive off ice, so that there are people who live in, like, even if they're cave people, they still are surviving out here in these wastes, and that there was ever any intention of someone putting them out there, whether it be like, oh, we're just going to experiment, or maybe we're trying to raise a different type of icer, maybe we're trying to do something, like, it doesn't even have to be related to the Empire. This could be something completely different. That, to me, when I read it, I was like, oh man, there are so many possibilities with this. I wonder where this story is going. And again, it was just more interesting to me than this caveman trying to raise an army to overthrow an empire. So, but we'll see where that goes, if Saru wants to continue with that story, or if it just happened to be something that they mentioned and we never hear from it again. I hope it's not the latter, but who knows? So that was Meaning of All Sorts, and now we're going to go over Year of the Dragon. And Year of the Dragon has Leaf, once again, Styx, and Yuta, once again. And in this one, this is a dialogue, it's a drama, and it's training for Leaf for flight. The arc that it's supposed to be under is the Sea of Stars, and the synopsis happens to be that Pepper City hosts its annual Mythic Creature Festival in its arts district to ring in the Year of the Dragon. Leaf, Styx, and Yuta meet up and go for a flight together before watching the rockets and all the fireworks heralding in the new year. And with this log, it's kind of exactly how the synopsis says. It plays out to where Leaf is just kind of walking through Pepper City in just a general, what I'm imagining, kind of like Asian Matsuri. Matsuri is like festival. Just think of like, there's a major strip, major highway that's shut off. All these vendors are coming out. There's, probably at night, since they mentioned fireworks, and people are dressed up in yukata and they're dressed up in kimono, haori, like just very traditional kind of East Asian garb, walking down the street, eating candy, having snacks, having a great time, about to celebrate the rotation of the earth around the sun. And Leaf's just there. Again, he's trying to become more worldly. His arc, The Sea of Stars, that's it. He's just exploring everything. And he runs into Styx again. And what's cute is that Styx is really sticking with the coffee girl kind of thing. So she actually has a roasted bean. I'm assuming it's like a cart. And she's, selling these dragon brews and fiery hearts and just hot drinks, and very fitting for someone of this nature to be doing something like that. Like, rather than be another reveler or party goer, Styx is actually working. And Leaf buys a coffee, he drinks it. I think he likes it. And what was kind of funny is that, when we had Yule, Rizian and Leaf had coffee before, and Riz always kind of called it a potion or a concoction, and that kind of stays with it. And it even increases Leaf's RP energy, which I thought that was fun. And they just kind of talk, and then when, Leaf gets his drink, they run into Yuta, who again is just kind of wandering and kind of, I won't say aimlessly, but they just wanted to be a part of the log, so they just happened to be going about for the celebration. And the other thing that kind of happens is that Styx is like, hey, do you want to ride a real dragon? And using their shapeshift ability, Styx kind of transforms into, I pictured more of a Western, like European dragon, with kind of the elongated snout, almost like a dinosaur, kind of long neck, big head, wings out the shoulders, four legs, and a big long tail. And they go for a ride. Leaf and Yuta go for a ride. They are flying up above the city. And then, in classic Leaf fashion, the daredevil of our age, Leaf kicks into Styx's side like you would on a horse with stirrups, and that causes her to kind of buck a little bit. She goes up, then comes straight down, and Leaf is like, yeah, I love it. And then flies off the back of Styx. And while this is happening, Yuta is just kind of terrified. Yuta is kind of like, I hate this, what's going on? From the way that I imagined it, they kind of wrap their tail around one of the spines on Styx's back, and then stabs it in to make sure that they don't go flying. So I'm just imagining somebody's holding them like this, oh my god. And then you have somebody else who's shirtless in the wind, screaming, and then they go flying off the back. And this is where I think I really liked Styx's approach, because Styx, when they first came around again, just flat, depressed, sad, emo demon girl, right? Just, they really were. To the point where, we kind of told Kurogane, it's not that we dislike the character, it's just that there have been logs after logs after logs of just, nihilistic, hate everything, nothing can go on kind of behavior. And then, I want to say it was the roleplay with Charon, where they then absorbed Charon into their soul, kind of. Completely flipped, right? And it was okay, so now I've been reunited with my love. I think, if I'm reading that right. now I'm just the happiest person you've ever met, and nothing. It's like Styx was so happy and so always like, woo, that nothing was ever taken seriously. Unless it was like one of the several life or death battles that Styx was having. But even then, I never felt like Styx was worried, which is like the exact opposite of how they were before, but also had the same kind of like, nothing really matters because I'm always happy and I can't take anything seriously, so I, as the reader, couldn't take the character seriously. But when Leaf goes flying off, Styx kind of, I want to say, finds like a middle ground of like, okay, we were having fun, we were flying around on the dragon, but he's in serious danger right now. Because, you know, Leaf is on the back and then coming down to Leaf's back up here because they, you know, gravity, wind, all that stuff. Science. Yeah, science, bitch. And of course, he said his legendary flapjacks joke. And, excuse me. And then while fighting for his life in midair, Leaf just kind of figures out somewhat how to fly. So he goes flying off in the air and he's like, okay, so I was just at a Yule event where there were people flying around everywhere. He got to witness, I think he was present for the Genesis and the Genesis and Hypo fight. But I know he at least saw a few people. Actually, at the big finale, people were flying around as well. So he knows that it's very possible. And he knows kind of internally, now that he's been using his talent and he's been using his energy, he kind of knows like how to feel it out. So it's one of those, you know, it's the trope of like, I have to bring out my power to save my life in this last second. But he does, and he starts to come back down, and then he kind of kicks these tornadoes off of his feet, and that's what slows his descent. That's what stops him from being a stain in the middle of Pepper City. But he really can't control it. So now he's kind of flying all around, but he's alive. And, you know, Styx is a little bit like, whew, all right, so that's cool. You know, and they just kind of wrap everything up. But the highlight of this whole log was, and I wish it was timestamped, right here. When this post came, it literally was midnight, January 1st of 2024. So I don't know how Ike timed it out that it would be their post. Maybe they just idled for a little bit, but yeah, they did do it, and they hit right at the actual year of the dragon that it is right now. And that's pretty much it. So Leaf kind of develops their ability to fly, gives Styx a nice little nickname called Draco. Yuta now is getting more experience around metas, which is why before, when I said like I would like to see a spar between Ariel and Yuta, I think that would be beneficial to the both of them, because while Ariel is a meta and can bring out their energy when they need to, I don't think they can do it when they want to. And I think that if they kind of, you know, flex a little bit, flex the actual spiritual muscles that are there, it'll help them develop their techniques a little bit better. And for Yuta, I just think it'd be good to kind of get them out of their shell a little bit, because they have something to offer. There is definitely something there. We just haven't seen it yet. So that was pretty much it for the review for this one. It was a fun read. It was very descriptive. You know, I really felt like we were at a festival. But I guess now I can speak on the Flanderism that I was talking about 10 minutes ago. And again, it's not that it's a bad thing. And this is probably only going to be coming from me, because I'm the only person that I think, other than Khonshu, that knows of Leaf from D&D BI. And let me see if I can find that. real quick. Yeah. So, how do I want to word this? It's just that Leaf became a different character. And the way that Leaf kind of had this kind of like country bumpkin like accent to him, it was very subtle at first. And then it just kind of became the character, which again, I don't think is a bad thing. But if I could, I would like to both show and read to you, if I can get this tab to come back. Here we go. The way that Leaf spoke before and the way that Leaf speaks right now. So I'm just going to pick this here. I don't even know where we're at. But he says, I agree. We've had a pleasant stay here, and we've nearly recovered as much Sona as those bandits stole from us. I think we're nearly ready to head to Ravel. We really just need a little bit more to buy some armor. Sounds as if you've been searching for us. Like, just the way that the character speaks versus... here's Year of the Dragon. Well, I'm glad you're on the mend. Still walking off a bad shot from some kind of light beam that hit me in the stomach, honestly. Can you take us both at once, Draco? You know, it just has changed the character. And I'm going to be brutally honest. This version, this what I am in my head thinking of as a much younger, again, much more naive, just unknowing of the ways of the world. I think that this is a better version of Leaf. But it's just different. Like, for me, it's so different from this guy. I think when they first meet, when Grace and Leaf first meet, he's at the temple that she's at, and you know, Grace is like, hey, like, welcome to the temple, would you like a blessing from us? And he starts to turn away, and he's like, you know what, I think I will take the blessing. And if I were to guesstimate how this current Leaf would say, like, you know what, I reckon I really would like, and it's, you know, he's just really laying into it. But what does that mean? What does that mean? Why am I speaking about this? And it's not to, I'm not speaking to Ike directly. I'm talking to the general populace about this. It's very much okay to change your character and in a way that you find fun. Because when I read Leaf now, I know that Ike likes writing Leaf this way. I know that Ike is having fun with this character. And it's totally okay to have a very serious main character who isn't like your average serious main character. It's totally cool for someone to have a big old axe and speak with an accent, but they're not a joke. Like, they will still beat your ass while whistling Dixie, you know? Like, it's just that there's still people that can do that. There's big old country boys who were UFC champions, and if you don't believe me, look up Roy Nelson. So I think that, like, that is a very, for me, it stands out. But it's a very cool way to characterize your character, to where they aren't just your run-of-the-mill, just, you know, I'm the stoic main character, and I'm always trying to be so cool and say just enough, and I have all this wisdom and all this experience. Like, Leaf doesn't. He's just naturally gifted. He's just naturally gifted, naturally athletic, and doesn't know any kind of katas or forms. He's just been on the road protecting people from monsters, and now he's out in the verse. So that's all I wanted to say on that. Like, the Flanderism, it isn't a bad thing, but like, that's just what he is now. It would be hard for us to then revert him back to the way he was in D&D BI, because then we have that's a whole different nest of eggs. But I'm not going to get into that. I've talked to you guys for 30 minutes already. If you've made it this far, I appreciate it, and I thank you. And I will guess see you in the next roleplay review.